to talk about a download that I got about Lucy. Y'all know who Lucy is, right? Lucifer. And if you're into Gnosticism, which as a chosen person, you're probably a Gnostic, not agnostic, a Gnosis, which means knowledge, which means knowing, like clear knowing, which is how I know a lot of y'all motherfucking business, because I have clear cognizance. My clear is cognizance, cognition. So Gnosticism, which is G-N-O, okay? Gnosticism is knowing. And in Gnosticism, we know that God is not a single, I don't even like saying entity, but a single being. God is composed of about 4 or 5 different Aeons, is what they're called. But I got a download about, you know, how Sophia, they say Sophia fell, which is our divine feminine, how we get our intuition. The divine mother who created this realm, supposedly, right? Sophia is how we get our intuition from the divine. And then Satan, as the demiurge, is what's keeping us confounded in these bodies and recycling through lifetimes to feed the archons. Well, the archons to feed the demiurge, right? Because that's why they have all these energy vampires sucking up our energies to feed their fucking existence, like in the Matrix. So, but Sophia was blamed for the fall. Like they blame Sophia for creating the demiurge, right? They say she wandered off to create on her own, as, you know, patriarchy, misogyny, you know, they always blaming the female for something. Even in Gnosticism, the female is blamed for something. It's that, and I think that's the whole era that God has been trying to fix for literally aeons. Literally. It's blaming the feminine and condemning the feminine, like and suppressing the feminine through all these lifetimes, from the beginning of time, through every religion, no matter what. There's rarely, they worship, like, you know, the Mother Mary, but Mother Mary she's an archetype of Sophia, child. But anyways, the download was that Sophia never fell and created this realm. If you know anything about ascension, you know that you have to balance your divine masculine, your divine feminine, and your shadow, which is how Satan usually gets access to a lot of people, is through their shadow. So without a balance and controlled shadow, you'll never ascend. So you have to have those 3 things balanced in order to reach Christ consciousness. So with that shadow element being Lucifer, because Lucifer is the fallen angel, right? If there are eons in the pleroma, and if Lucifer does the work, you know, the shadow work of God, like that's God's shadow side, right? Puts everybody through these karmic tests to see if they'll risk their divinity or choose their ego, you know, the narcissistic side of people. That's the test. That's the spiritual war. Spirituality, divinity, or narcissism, selfishness, ego, which turns you evil. If you're selfish, you're evil. So that's the war, and that's the job that God gave the devil to do. But the devil fell. This is how the devil fell from the pleroma, because he was an Aeon, like Sophia, the divine mother, divine feminine. He fell because as ego, he decided to create on his own. It wasn't Sophia, it was Lucifer who decided to create. And that's why, you know, he created this realm. Hello. That's why he is over this earth. This is his dominion. This is hell. How can it be Sophia created it and then she's trapped in it? That doesn't make any sense. How could she be trapped in her own creation? It had to have been created by a demonic, you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't really make much sense for her to be trapped in her own creation. And then her, because she created, they said she created the devil, right? Because she went off on her own. But that's not true. She came to save. She came to save us. She came to correct Satan's mistake. Just like Archangel Michael. He's like the rescuer archangel. The Divine Mother came to give us our consciousness, our, divinity, our intuition, to wake us up, to make us divine. Without that, we would not be divine. And that's the reason why Satan is so jealous and hates us, because we can do all those things. Once we're balanced, we can create and we can maintain our divinity. But Satan cannot do those things, because Satan is a fragment. God is a fragmentation of a divine masculine, divine feminine, and the shadow side. Which is why, like I said, if we're made in God's image, you have to balance all three of those things: your divine masculine, your divine feminine, and your shadow side, in order to ascend. Doesn't that make sense? That's why God doesn't care about genders and things like that, because God is both genders. We're outside of these bodies, gender does not matter, because it's not necessary. But in order to be human and to procreate, you need to assign gender. But the spirit does not have a gender. That's why people can be gay. They have the apparatuses to procreate, but their spirit, is not attracted to that. I hope it'll get you get it. If you get it, it makes sense to who it makes sense to. It's not a message for everybody. It's not a download for everybody. It's a download for the chosen ones who can comprehend what I'm saying. And yeah, you got to let it marinate a little bit sometimes, because you got to know what Gnosticism is first. That's the first thing. Do your research. Go do your research and figure out what Gnosis is, and how to, access the Sophia consciousness. Sophia, the Divine Mother. Learn what the pleroma is, and then we can take it from there. All right. So, all right, toodles.